Hey everybody, what's up? Jeffrey Way here, back with JavaScript from Null Chapter 3. Okay, so in this lesson we're going to take a look at if statements, we're going to look at for statements, while statements, the ternary operator, we're going to be creating arrays and learning how to filter through them, and then we're also going to take a look at some of the methods that come with the string object. We're not going to take a look at all of them, but because you can get cluttered when you just get all of this information thrown at you, you're not going to remember any of it. So we're going to take a look at the stuff that you're actually going to use, at least at first. Okay, so first things first, we're going to take a look at the standard if statement. So I have created a new document here, and we're going to open up script tags. And the first thing that we're going to do here is create a variable. So we'll do var sum var equals a string. And what we're going to do here is we're going to find out if sum var is equal to the value hello world, and if it is, we're going to do something. So we're going to say if sum var equals, and remember what we discussed last chapter, we're actually using the equality sign. So we're not assigning it, we're using 3. Okay. And if sum var equals hello world, then do something. So we're going to use brackets. And what we'll do here is we'll just do something like document.write matches. And you can see over here in the live preview, by the way, this is the latest version of Espresso 1.1. I'm liking it quite a bit, so do take a look at it. It's from MacRabbit. Okay, so if sum var equals hello world, document.write. So you can see if we change it just one bit, it automatically updates. So cool. We are already doing statements. So we can say if sum var is equal to this mistyped hello world, document write matches. But what if it doesn't? We don't have anything to do. And we're going to do the else statement. So we're just going to write else and then create another one. Document.write does not match. And you can see to the left, does not match. Okay, so that's really all it is. You have if, and then you have some kind of operation. You're checking it. So you can see if something equals, you can see if something is greater than. For instance, if we did var x equals 1, we could then do if x is greater than 1, then document.write is greater, else is not. And we're going to get is not because 1 is not greater than 1. Okay, well, let's change it to x equals 2. Now you can see it automatically updates to is greater. Now, what if we set if x is greater than 2, but what if we want to say if it's greater than or equal to? In that case, we're going to create the greater than sign and then follow it with equal. And that means, as you would guess, if x, meaning the value of 2, is greater than or equal to 2, then write something. Okay? And alternatively, of course, we can do less than or equal to 2. Okay? Okay, so if statements. Now, we have a couple options here. We can do and or. So to give you an example, we can say if x equals 2 or, and if we want to do or, what we'll do here is we're going to wrap this one in parentheses, and then we're going to say if x equals 2 or x is greater than 1, or x, let's say or x is greater than 4. This is total gibberish, but it'll work fine. Then document.write good. And we get good. So let's change this to something where it will not match. I'm going to change this to 3 because that means x does not equal 2 and it's not greater than 4. And we get nothing. And if we want, we can do else. No match. And that's what we're going to get. Okay, so you can see how we use the or symbol. You can see if we change that to or, that's not going to work. We're going to use 2 of the little bars, and that represents or. Now, if we want to do and, we're not going to do just the and symbol. You might think that at first. We're going to use 2 ands, as you can see right there, and that's the standard method. I think you can maybe get away with leaving it off, but I'm not sure how that works, so just do the best practice, do 2 and symbols. So we're saying if x equals 2 and x is greater than 4, which we know is impossible, document.write. So in this case, we would change x to 5 or something, like so. And there we go. So just remember, when you're matching it, you want to make sure you wrap both sides in their own set of parentheses. So this one gets its own set, this one gets its own set, and then the closing parentheses right here is closing our original if check. Okay, the next thing I want to teach you is something called the ternary operator. So what is a ternary operator? It's think of it as shorthand. So I don't want to delete this so you guys can download the source code. So why don't we do this? We're going to say x equals, right now it's equal to 5, but we're going to change it. We're going to say x is equal to, and then we're going to check something. So we're going to say if x equals 5, then, and I'm going to go ahead and write it out, and then we'll decipher it. If x equals 5, then we'll change it to 10, else 5. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, let's go ahead and I'm just using document right here. Usually you would use something like alert or console log. I'm just doing that because it's nice to have the auto update on the live preview with Espresso. So we're going to document that right x. Okay, so you can see here at the very beginning we don't have any spaces, but if we begin, x is equal to 5, as you can see up here in the top left. Then we perform an operation, and it's changed, and then we do it again, and it's equal to 10. So what does this mean? This is a ternary operator. We're saying x is equal to, then we do a check, some kind of check. The question mark means if that test returns true, then we do something, and then the colon is else. So just think of question mark is, does that match? Then do something. Colon means if it doesn't match, or else do something else. So when would you use this? It's considered, it's actually kind of mixed among the community, whether it's a good practice or a bad practice. I think there's nothing wrong with using it. There's a couple guidelines you need to make sure. Obviously, the standard version of this would be if x equals 5. I'm going to go ahead and do this for your reference. X equals 10. Else x equals 5. Okay, so you can obviously see one line is preferable to 5 or 6. So you might think, oh, of course, just always use the ternary operator. There's a couple of reasons you shouldn't. One, it's very arguable that this is much less readable. So you should think about that. Creating readable code, just because it's more complicated and cooler looking, doesn't mean you should necessarily do it. And second, if you can foresee, notice here that we can only do one thing with the if statement. So it's not like we do x equals 10, y equals 20, z equals 30. You can't do that here. You can only do one task. So if you did decide, okay, if x equals 5, then we're going to have x equal 10 and then something else, you really can't do that. You would then have to turn it into the long form. So your standard guideline is if you're assigning maybe a constant or something like that where you're positive you won't have to do more operations after the if statement, then feel free to use this ternary operator. Otherwise, play it safe and use the long form. Okay, and we'll go over that a little bit more in future lessons. But just know you have a value, you make it equal to a test. If that test returns true, in this case x equals 5 is true, then we perform an operation, and if it's not, we do something else. Else, keyword there. Okay, next step I want to teach you guys about is for statements. What are for statements? For statements are loops. So we're going to create ultimately, we're going to create an array, and we're going to loop through that array. But first, let's do something simple. So what's the standard syntax for a for statement? Well, you have 3 parts. First, for, we're going to create a variable, var I, and usually, this is most common, you see var I equals 0. So we're creating a new variable. We're setting that variable equal to a number. And then we're going to test it, so we'll say I is less than 10. Okay, so create a variable called I, and as long as I is less than 10, I++. Okay, so you'll see this all over. You'll use this forever. You live in loops. We're saying it as long as I equals 0 and I is less than 10, then do something. And then at the very end, when you're finished with your operations, I++, and if you remember from the previous lesson, that means add 1. Okay, increment it by 1. So the first time I will equal 1. It's going to perform an operation, and then it's going to loop around again, and the next time I will equal 2, then it's going to loop around again, and I will equal 3. So we will begin by, let's just write it to the browser. So we're going to do document.writeln. Now the only difference between document.write and document.writeln means document create a new line and write it. So we're going to write I. And you can immediately see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9. Okay, so why didn't it go up to 10? And it's because we're saying as long as I is less than 10. So when it went around again and I was equal to 10, this no longer passed. So if you wanted it to log 10, you would do I is less than or equal to 10. And you can see that update right there. So that's a simple crash course in loops. You create a variable as long as it's less than anything that you set, increment it by 1, do an operation, and as soon as your operation is complete, you can do as many things as you want here. It'll run again, and it'll increment by I. Okay. So how would you actually use this in a real world? Let's create an array. Your first array, var my r. It's going to be equal to an array, and we're going to use the object literal format, which is just creating open bracket, close bracket, and that means array. So we can fill this up, my array. There are a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to show you. This is an easy way to do it, but there are more simple ways. Okay. And we're going to loop through here. So we've created an array. We've created new instances. So we're just saying array in your first item, create hello world array. And think of arrays just as a list of data. It's a way to group common data into one variable, and then you can filter through that. So we'll say var I equals 0, and as long as I is less than, so we need to replace this with the total number of items in our array. And the way we can do that is with a method called length. So we'll do my array length I++. And this time we're going to document.write my array I. And you're going to get hello world, hello universe undefined. And of course we're getting undefined because we need to change that from less than or equal to less than. And you get hello world, hello universe. Okay, so let's decipher this. We created a new array. We assigned new values to each new index of our array. And then we go through our for statement and we say var I equals 0 as long as 0 is less than the total number of items in our array. Or if you want to write this, why don't we do this right now? Just to give you an idea of how many items are in our array. You get 2, 2, and that's running twice. So it's actually, there are 2 items in our array, 1, 2. Okay. So this is considered, this is really higher level than where you're at right now, but this is considered a bad practice because every time we run our for loop, it has to determine the length of our array. And as you can imagine, if you have an array with like maybe 50 items in it, that can take some time. So instead, you can create a comma, and you can do len equals my array.length, and I is less than, and let me just kind of make this a little larger. I don't want to go over this. Don't worry if you don't understand this at right now, because it's a little higher level. We're saying var I equals 0, and then we're creating another variable designated by the comma, and now a new variable called len, and that's equal to the length. So len will be equal to 2. And then we're saying as long as I is less than 2, do some operations, and then increment I by 1, and run this test again. Okay, the next thing we want to do here is, in addition to for statements, you have, and by the way, we're going to come back a little later and figure out better ways, maybe in chapter 4, better ways to create your arrays. So we're going to do while statements, very similar to for statements. So we can say while, and then we're going to do a test, and we'll say I is less than 10, perform some operation, document.write I, and of course we need to set I, so var I equals 0, Okay, I'm back. Sorry if you saw a little glitch there. It's because the preview from Espresso seems to be having a little bit of trouble auto updating our script. So we're going to go ahead and write it now, and then we'll click on preview. So anyways, I'm doing while I is less than 10. Then we're going to do an operation, and finally we're going to increment I by 1. That way, when I is 1, it'll run an operation 2, 3, 4, but once it gets to 10, 10 will no longer be less than 10, in which case it'll break out of the statement and continue on. Now, what if we want to break out prematurely? Why don't we do something like this? If I is equal to maybe 4, then we're going to write break. And this is a perfect example of the shorthand of if statements, and we'll go over that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and click preview, and we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And because it did pass this operation, it broke out completely. So if you want to see for an example, if we comment that out, it'll go all the way to 9. Okay? So you can see here we're supposed to do this. That is the proper form, and that's really considered the best practice. Once again, if you see yourself doing more operations, if I equals 4, then really do the best practice of creating your brackets. On the other hand, if it's really something where you know you'll never do anything but this one operation, you can just leave it off, okay? Like so. And once again, if I go to preview, you'll see it breaks off there. Cool. The final thing we're going to go through today is there's also another form called the do while statement. I don't want to flood you with different information. You most often use the while and the for. Actually, for example, I don't even know if I've ever used a do while statement because you can do it with these, so it's not a big deal. And the final thing I want to go over with you today is methods of the string object. So let's comment this out as well. If you remember in the previous lesson, I taught you that even though we create a variable, a string, even though it's a string, it has methods available to it because it'll be converted into the string object. The method of the string object will be called, the value will be returned, and then the object will be deleted, only leaving the string. So let's take a look at some of the methods available to us. So var my string is going to be equal to hello world. Once again, preview. Nothing's going to happen because we haven't done anything with that variable. So why don't we do this? Document dot write, and we're going to do my string. And if we preview this again, you'll see hello world. So let's take a look at some methods that we can add to this. My string dot. The first one we're going to take a look at is to uppercase. I think we even looked at this not too long ago. And of course it's a method, and because something is a function or a method, we need to append those opening and closing parentheses. And we get hello world, and as you guessed, it turns it all the letters to uppercase. Additionally, we have to lowercase. Okay. What else do we have? We can take a look at length. Now, when working with an array, length will return the total number of items, in this case 2. However, when working with a string, it returns the total number of characters. So if we do my string dot length, we get 11, and that's because there are 11 characters in hello world. Okay. Next we have, I don't want to go over, there's actually quite a few more, but these are the ones you're really going to find yourself using. The next one I show you is value of. So what is value of? Let's take a look. And as you can see right there, that's going to show you the actual function, value of native code. And to show you this one, let's go into Firefox. I'm going to drag this into Firefox right here. And we're going to go back to our console just because it's more powerful. And what we'll do here is we're going to do my string dot split, and we're going to split it at the space right here. And then we're going to console.log s. Refresh, and now we're going to get hello world, and you can see it's become an array. So if we wanted to do console.log s0, oops, we're going to get hello, because remember, arrays are 0 based, which means the very first item in the array is going to be the first one, the second one, and so forth. So you begin with 0. So here we split it, so we took this string, we split it at the space, hello world, and universe. And now you can see it's going to have a bigger length, so it's going to split it into more items. And if we come back and we just log the whole thing, it's going to log the array hello world and universe. And what we can do here now, console.log, and we'll do something like the third one. And you're going to get universe, because remember, once again, you would think it would be and, but actually hello will be 0, world will be 1, and is 2, universe is 3. Okay, and that is split. So if we wanted, we could split it anywhere. If we could do a colon there, we could do split it at the colon. And now we can do the first one, because it's only going to be split into 0 and 1. If we log that, we'll get and universe. Okay, this is the last day of really pure fundamentals that we're going to get into. In Chapter 4, we're going to actually learn how to work with the DOM. We're going to start changing elements, and then we're going to move on towards animations and more fun stuff that I bet you guys are interested in. So I will see you next Friday, I believe is Christmas, so I will either record this screencast before then, or you'll see it on the weekend after Christmas. So I am Jeffrey Way, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.